Hey, hi, I'm here with Ken Berlin, who is the president and CEO of the Climate Reality Project at the fabulous Climate Reality Brazil training. Ken, first of all, congratulations. Are you somewhat relieved that you pulled it off? Everyone's here and everything's working?
Thank you. We've done, I think, now 26 of these, so I think we have it down, the process down pretty well. We've got 4 more scheduled next year. In this process, we're training climate leaders, and we will have 7,000 trained leaders trained in these 3-day sessions we do. By the end of this session, by the end of next year, we expect to have 9,000 to 10,000 trained leaders.
That's fantastic. Now, you're fairly new to the organization. You just started when?
April.
In April. But you have a long background in working on climate change and environmental issues. So what was it that brought you? What was your desire to come?
Well, there are 3 things that really brought me to the organization. The first, of course, was working with Al Gore. He is really the leader in this field. He's a very exciting person to be with. He's always coming up with new ideas and new approaches. The second is, as I said, we have these trained climate leaders. Our climate leaders have been trained in over 110 countries. We therefore have really a worldwide reach as an organization to try and do things to support the transition to a clean energy society and to support efforts to reduce carbon emissions. And the third thing is we have a terrific media and social media department. We've got a group of 5 people who do creative work from an advertising background. We have 5 people in digital. We work with a lot of people on the outside, a lot of both communications and advertising firms. So we have this terrific ability to project our ideas and our views in social media. We try and do it to reach as many people as possible, and with targeted messages that we think are effective in getting our message across about climate change.
Right. So are the climate leaders that come out of here, are they your effort to expand on what Al Gore had been doing with his presentations that many years, so you can multiply the ranks of, just communicating the message? Is that the point of the core?
I mean, the goal from the very beginning was to create these climate leaders, so it's not different, but obviously we're trying to really work on the politics of climate change, not directly in elections, but to convince people that they need to do something about climate change. We have a lot of projects, and having 7,000 to 10,000 well-trained people to do this work with us, gives us a tremendous ability to get things done.
So I have been involved in the business aspect of climate change, in the political aspect, running for office, and in the media aspect of trying to affect the disinformation campaign about climate change. Sometimes I don't know which one of those obstacles is harder, or which one do you believe it is, and therefore what is the path of progression? Because obviously if you don't have public opinion, you don't have, you can't win an election. But it's hard to do. You're fighting disinformation campaigns, so it goes back to the media.
Well, we think the most important thing on climate change right now is to increase the number of activists who work on climate change. If you look at polling in the United States, it shows that 65 to 70% of people think that something should be done about climate change and that the government should take action. But at the same time, the number of people who give that who look at it as their highest priority issue is probably more between 1% and 2%. The result of that is that even though the vast majority of people want something done in the abstract, politicians don't see that because people aren't voting on it. They're not going to their politicians enough about it. So our goal is to really expand that group of people, and our challenge is to figure out how to do that. There are really 2 issues on that. One is we've got to show people that this is an urgent issue that needs to be addressed now. It's not a future issue. It's an issue that we need to look at today. And we have to show that there are solutions to this that benefit the economy, that we will wind up with cheaper energy and better energy if we, in fact, transition to a clean energy economy.
Well, time is not on our side in that regard, as we know with the latest IPCC reports. So is there going to be an adjustment to strategy? Because I understand the grassroots, ground-up pressure on electing those candidates who are going to pass carbon legislation is ultimately what we'd like, right? But do we have enough time to do that, and what else can we do?
Well, the way we've looked at it is we've made very, very good linear progress the last few years on climate change. We've stopped almost all new coal plants from being built. We're building very, very large amounts of renewable energy in the United States. So we're making progress, but it's not enough. if we really want to solve this. The hope is that as renewable energy becomes more cost competitive, and we think it'll be fully cost competitive in the next few years, it is already partially, then we hope to switch from linear progress to exponential progress, where all of a sudden we have an explosion of activity in climate change. We need to do what's necessary. We may not be quite at that point yet of the takeoff we need, but we're getting very close to it. We think we'll reach it in the next few years, and we think we'll reach it in time.
I think one of the things we're seeing is a shift in the business climate, where business leaders are stepping forward. The disinvestment by the Rockefeller Fund, you're seeing Microsoft, IKEA, companies like this stepping forward. That seems like it should be making a statement, but there's such political division as it regards climate change. How do you depoliticize it? How do you say to a Republican, you can want to act on climate change? It doesn't change your party status. That seems to be a big problem.
Well, our first approach is to reach out to the 70% of people who already think something should be done about climate change. If we can do that, we can do this very, very successfully. For the climate deniers right now, I think the key is to show the economics, to show that in fact transitioning to a clean energy economy will benefit them and will ultimately lead to cheaper energy. So we think that's the key. But the starting point is dealing with the 70% of people who already think something should be done about it but who aren't taking action.
Now, we're coming up on some big talks, 2015 Paris. So it seems as if just that the rest of the country is a lot more, the world is a lot more, has a greater access or understanding to just how important these talks are than the U.S. Most people you know in the U.S. have no idea that this is happening. And our Senate looks like it's election day. We don't know today, right? But it's a possibility it could go the other way. What's the 2015, in your view, what's the best 2015 strategy? President Obama's talked about maybe an agreement versus a treaty. What do we do, Ken, about Paris?
Well, the president is in fact committed to have the U.S. make reasonably strong commitments to reduce their emissions. I think they're talking about a 17% reduction from 2005. We hope that number will rapidly escalate between 2020 and 2030 as these new regulations come into effect. I think the U.S. is in a position to be a leader. The approach has come up with, which is a bit technical but makes sense here, is to really build this treaty from the bottom up, to get countries to make commitments to reduce their emissions. That's what we're working on in the Climate Reality Project. That's what I think needs to be done. If we can get key countries around the world to make a commitment, I think we have a chance of getting a treaty. Now, it's not the final treaty we'll need, because it won't be strong enough. But again, it's an important step in the road. If we can get every country in the world making a commitment, we can strengthen those, we think, over the next 5 years to get where we really need to be to successfully address climate change.
And as far as the U.S. is concerned, do you think, given that conservative economists, many of them have supported a carbon neutral, revenue neutral carbon tax, or I'd call it a carbon dividend or something positive, I'd spin it differently. Do you think that's the best avenue at this point to try to use the conservative support for the market signals as our means to passing something in the U.S.?
Well, we're doing two things. First of all, we're doing everything we can to lower the cost of renewable energy, so that renewable energy becomes cost competitive with fossil fuels, with or without a carbon tax. I think a carbon tax is the best approach to put a price on a carbon. It's the fair thing to do. Businesses are polluting. They're not paying for that pollution. They should pay for it. And the easiest market mechanism to do that is a carbon tax that's either directly refunded to everyone, which is called cap and dividend, or which is offset with other taxes. So it's a tax that then offsets the revenue collected from the carbon tax by lowering other taxes. So again, it'll either be a tax and dividend, not cap, sorry, tax and dividend, or it'll be a tax and rebate on other taxes in the full amount of the tax. That would give very strong market signals. It makes tremendous sense for the economy. It would be a tremendous boost to the economy. We sort of give Republicans what they want. If we do it as a lowering of other taxes, they'll lower income tax, they can lower corporate tax, and meanwhile we'll have the market signal we need to start addressing climate change more quickly and more urgently than if we don't have it.
The University of Michigan just released a study about the carbon tax, and they found majority support. It was 56% with Republicans, Democrats and independents for a revenue-neutral carbon tax, but when funding was included for renewables, it went up to 60%. So that's great news, right? That the public themselves, they get it. But how are you going to, how do we translate that, the polling data on that and on climate change that is good into a bill with a name on it, and just the political necessity of passing legislation?
Well, look, what we need right now is 60 senators, and we need a majority in the House of Representatives to get something like that through. That doesn't seem possible in the near term. That doesn't mean, though, after the next election, for example, that we can't start getting to that level. We can get most Democrats, and we think we can get enough Republicans to bring that about.
As someone who's run for three times on climate change, I will say what's missing is that, unlike Emily's list, which has an infrastructure to elect women, and labor, which has its own machine, there really isn't that kind of infrastructure to elect candidates who will openly support action on climate change. Any thoughts on that? How to build all these different groups and coalitions so that we actually work to elect?
Well, I think there's been tremendous progress on that in this election. I think the League of Conservation Voters has said they're putting $35 million into the election, in direct campaign expenditures. Tom Steyer through NextGen is putting in, I forget the exact number, but I think it's over $15 million. So suddenly, the environmental community is getting very, very organized in their financial contribution. They've always been able to put some activists out, but I think this is changing rapidly. When this election is over tonight, it's going to be hard to tell the impact of it. Democrats could lose. That doesn't mean the work on environment wasn't successful. It may just mean that other factors were more important. There are also some key gubernatorial races, like the race in Florida, where climate change is an issue. It'll be interesting to see how those come out.
The last question is this. We're going to see more extreme weather events. We know that. It's in the pipeline. In a way, that's horrible, right? But in a way, does that help speed the action on climate change?
Well, look, obviously, we all hate the fact that we're getting extreme weather out of that, and we all wish that would not be the case. But the thing about climate change is we are going to win the fight on climate change because you can only hide from this for so long. You can't hide from it forever. It's been everybody's seeing it. Everybody's seeing what's happening. The last line of defense against it now is that, well, we know there's climate change, but it's not being caused by humans. That argument has no basis. I don't think it can hold up very long, and I think more and more people will start paying attention to this as they see what's happening in the real world, and that will push us towards successfully addressing the issue.
So that may be our tipping point.
It will be a tipping point, and we think it'll be in the next few years.
Well, that's good news. Ken Berlin from Climate Reality, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, hi, I'm here with Ken Berlin, who is